Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Arts and Ideas. Today we're at Gaston Fine Art and Frame Shop, which is on Route 9 in Shrewsbury, Mass. And thank you so much to John Gaston, who is the proprietor and also the top framer here, I guess you'd say. And thanks for inviting us into your gallery.
Thanks for coming in.
And I wanted to ask you a little bit about yourself. I know you have been in the framing business for quite some time. How did you get started?
I actually got started in the framing business back in 1987, just as I was graduating from high school. I was getting ready to go off to art school, and Dad was working as a fine artist and designer at the time, and walked into a local frame shop that used to be here in Shrewsbury, also on Route 9, and asked them if they was having something framed, and asked them if they needed some help, and that his son could read a ruler and was going off to art school and knew red from blue and so forth and so on. And it sort of started there. I worked part-time for them that summer and spent the next 4.5 years there while I was going to art school.
Where did you go to art school?
I went to Framingham State College and I have a fine art degree from there with a minor in art history. And
well, the art is in the family, though, because your dad is John Gaston Sr.
Yes,
and
with an M.
John
with an
M. Gaston.
John M. Gaston, that's right.
And you're John also, but I'm
Right.
going to call you Harry because
Harry
that's what you go by.
It helps. Yes, it helps. Thanks.
So then you were working as a framer for how many years then? Is that?
It's been 23 years at this point, almost 24.
And then you came to this place and invested together with your dad in this business?
Well, I just to sort of fill the gap, I worked with that. They were another father and son operation. I worked with them for about 9 years. After I finished art school, I spent a few years with them, sort of got my life started. I was, ready to get married and go on and do other things. So it was time to make a change. I actually took a job selling picture framing materials to picture framers, and went on the road as a salesman. That didn't work out. Being on the road wasn't good for me. I missed the art side of the business. So I then...
Well, framing is definitely an art, and I always stress that so much because the frame itself and the way you design it is so you really are using your art talents and your design background and so forth and so on.
That's part of what made me decide to stick with framing. Was as I was leaving art school, it was okay, go be a graphic designer and make a living in the arts, paint and starve, or do this framing thing that I could actually make a couple of bucks at and maybe earn a living. And 23 years later, and it's been a heck of a ride. But about 5 years ago, I was working for a national picture framing chain as an operations manager, and Dad and I decided Dad was sort of semi-retired, looking for something to do, and I was ready for a change. I had a couple of young kids. I didn't want to be traveling all over the place anymore, and had enough of the corporate environment. Wanted to get back to the art side of the business and the creative side. And we decided to pool some resources and open up a gallery here.
I understand all the framing you do is on location right here, and you are doing the work yourself.
Yes, everything we do is done here by us, by these hands, and this equipment and all this stuff you see around you. And,
well, I am wowed by your equipment, I must say. Now, what is the benefit of having something custom framed? I mean, why is that a good idea?
Well, there are several reasons, in no particular order. One is if you have something that is of value to you. It doesn't have to be monetary value. Maybe it's something it's a family heirloom, so it has sentimental value, or maybe it's something temporary that you want as a decorative item in your home. If you frame it properly, it's going to last forever. It's going to outlive all of us by a long shot. So your children might get that family heirloom in the same condition it's in the day we put it in the frame, if we do it right.
Exactly.
And so the reason you want to do it is because it can be a creative experience. Come in, we'll work, we collaborate on a design, you get to choose some color, express your ideas, your thoughts, and really customize your home, put a custom piece of furniture in your home for not really a lot of money if you compare it to what it would cost
and
for a custom
something
furniture.
that you've chosen, something that you have loved, whatever. It doesn't have to be a work of art. It can be an object that you cherish.
Right. One of the favorite things I have hanging at home I've got lots of stuff hanging at home, as you might imagine, but one of my favorite things is really the first drawing that my oldest daughter ever did that looked like much of anything.
Yeah.
And you might say, oh, it's a kid's drawing. My kid makes thousands of drawings a day. Well, certain ones are significant.
That's it.
And those are worth framing. And it's worth bringing to someone who really knows what they're doing to help that last. Because you could go to a department store and pick up a frame. I know. But more often than not, that's what happens. People go, I'll go buy a cheap frame, I'll put it in there and I'll hang it on
And
the wall.
you're a certified professional picture framer who has taken tests and knows how to do it right and do the correct conservation presentation, and so that's very significant. Now, what are the pros and cons of glass versus plexiglass, for example?
Well, glass tends to be less expensive. There are more options in terms of types of finish, because glass isn't just glass. Picture glass is different. It's thinner, it's lighter, it's clearer, it's free of imperfections, air bubbles, inconsistencies in
You mean
color.
picture glass
Picture
as
framing
opposed
glass.
to working glass?
Correct. Like window glass, like
yeah,
you'd
yeah.
go up to
Yes, yes.
Home Depot, for example, and
Yes.
buy a piece of glass.
Yeah.
It's different, and it comes in a regular finish. It comes in a non-glare finish. It comes with and without UV protection, and it also comes as a fairly new product, not real new, but fairly new, called museum glass, which will give you clarity of regular glass with a non-reflective
That
surface.
stuff is fabulous. You can't believe that there's glass there. It's amazing. There's very little reflection, very little, and yet it doesn't. Remember, they had those old, those fuzzy non-glares that nobody liked. But this looks, it just looks like there's something.
Yeah, it's
wrong.
remarkable stuff. And when we
It
get to
is.
see some other things
Yeah.
a little further in the
And of course,
conversation, I'll show you some examples.
The UV is more expensive with most,
Yeah,
isn't it?
but amazingly enough, if you take a piece of regular picture glass, the regular finish, for example, like we have here, this is a piece of regular picture glass. The UV glass would look exactly the
Yes,
same.
yes,
The cost difference, if this is $5, the UV glass is $7.
really.
It's not significant. It used to be a very
Yeah.
wide gap. It's
Now,
really not anymore.
plexiglass is more expensive, isn't it?
Yeah, the acrylic and the plexiglass tends to be more expensive, especially when you get to the UV protections and the museum finishes. The advantages to plexiglass, there are some distinct advantages and disadvantages. Advantages, it's lighter,
Yeah,
doesn't shatter.
yes.
So if you want to glaze a canvas,
Or if you have to ship work.
or if you're shipping work, yeah, exactly. But if you're going to glaze a canvas, you don't have to worry about if the plexiglass or the acrylic takes an impact. It's not going to shatter. The glass shards aren't going to
Yes.
shred the canvas.
Yes.
Disadvantage: can't use it on pastels or chalks, things like that, because it gets and holds a static charge.
Yeah, it's hard to discharge.
So you have
the
to be
static.
careful in the environments that you
Yeah.
use it in, and it's not as easy to clean. You need a plexiglass
And
cleaner.
it
Tends to
scratches.
streak and
It
scratch.
scratches so
Right.
easily.
Right.
I
Where the
know that,
glass is
boy.
glass.
I
It
know
holds
that.
up really well. So.
Yeah, and so the glass is covering the artwork and the mat. And
Right.
what is the function of the mat?
Two things, two basic things. Again, one, to enhance the artwork, and two, to protect it. Everything we do is to enhance and protect for the most part. The mat will, you choose the right color, combination of colors. It will, you get to really make the framing an extension of the art by bridging the gap between the art and the frame with the right matte combination.
Yes.
So, in protecting, what it does is it now gives the framer some way to attach the artwork that's now not visible. And it goes in under the mat. The mat helps hold the art in place.
And the mat
And-
lifts the glass
And
off the artwork.
That's right. And the mat
yeah.
will create that small airspace that allows the glass to sit up off the art, because glass will sweat. We've all seen
And
sweaty windows
in
that
this
sweat.
weather, and the paper bubbles, and with the moisture addition in the air, and
Right.
so the
Well,
mat
paper
is
bubbling is different from the glass. We can talk about
no,
that
but
in a
I
second.
mean when you lift the glass off the artwork. In other words, what I'm saying is, if you just think, oh, I'll go to Target and I'll sandwich the thing under the glass.
Right.
But the problem is, after a few years, your paper will be
It's gonna wrinkle.
permanently buckled,
Absolutely will be.
because it doesn't have a room to breathe and expand and
Right.
contract.
And everyone has one of those old family photos that they've taken out of a little frame, and the glass is stuck to the face of the photo.
Yeah.
That's
Or
moisture.
there's rust foxing on the glass,
Right.
on the paper, or
Right.
whatever.
That's the moisture, and if the
Yeah.
glass doesn't have a chance to dry, that
So
moisture
let's,
will ruin
since
the
we're
artwork.
talking about mats, tell me what the point of an acid-free mat is.
Well, acid-free is sort of...
Acid-free is paper that's
Well, it is.
buffered
It
or-
is. No,
or
it's
that's-
actually
yeah.
a true acid-free mat is really made from cotton. So museum quality mat is made from cotton, which
Rather
is
than-
naturally acid-free
rather
rather than a
than
paper pulp.
rather
Right.
than wood
Rather than
pulp,
wood.
which is very acidic
Right.
and with tan.
But there is a whole line of archival mat board that meets Library of Congress standards for conservation and preservation that is made from wood pulp. But what they do is actually treat it without getting too scientific. They take
They
the
buffer
lignins.
it.
They take
They
no,
buff- yeah.
they don't buffer. They
No?
remove the
Ah.
lignin, which is part of that causes part of that chemical reaction once it's exposed to heat and light that causes paper to discolor and causes the acid to begin to form.
So the whole point being that in the old days, the papers that were made out of trees, if you have old sheet music in your house and you go to pick it up and it falls apart in your fingers, it's because the acid has eaten the pulp.
Right.
And it just has no strength at all, and it gets yellow, just like a newspaper will be yellow in no time.
Right.
Whereas the rag papers or the treated papers that are acid free will preserve the artwork and not burn it or mark it in any way.
Correct.
Great. So so the mats are lifting the glass off the paper, and so let's see. Now this would be what you would call a double mat with I'm not lining it up exactly, but you get the idea that they're lifting it the thickness of two mats.
Right.
Now I know there's something called a floated image.
Yep.
And what is that?
Well, basically, it would be a matte background without a window cut in it, and you would take and set the artwork on top of that background, so you can see the edges. A lot of times.
So in other words, the artwork would float inside the hole.
yeah,
correct?
it could. Yeah, you could
Yeah.
cut it with a window around it. A lot of times, it's just against a solid piece. For example, it would sit right against that,
Okay.
and you would see whatever color mat you would
Yes.
wanted to put behind
Yes.
it. You get to see the torn edges of the paper.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
if an image really goes too close to the edge and the artist doesn't want to sacrifice any of the image,
Yeah.
one way to deal with that is
Yeah.
to float it.
So therefore, this would be inside the opening of the mat rather than under the mat.
Right.
Cool. So let's think then. I see so many interesting things here. Now I noticed you had these little bump-ons.
Yes.
Now what's the point of that?
These little bump-ons, real technical term, but these are basically felt. They're made out of, some are made out of rubber, some are made out of cork. They come in, but these go on the bottom two corners of the frame. So as the frame sits against the wall, it allows the air to flow in behind the frame and control that moisture.
And it keeps
which
the
is-
frame from jiggling and
It can't.
rocking.
Yeah, it will help with that. But really, the primary function is one, so it doesn't rattle on the wall.
Air circulation.
But air circulation is really important. Again, it's about moisture,
Yeah.
controlling that moisture, especially if you're hanging a picture on an exterior wall
Yes.
of a house.
I
that-
remember
that
somebody
heat
telling me that
transfer.
you shouldn't hang paperworks on exterior walls.
Right. Well, nowadays
Come
the way
to
they
my
insulate
house,
houses,
you'll-
I don't think it makes much difference.
No, yeah, I think you're right. So let's see.